I think that, okay, so normally we are supposed to have other panelists presenting today, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. So where are they now?
That is,
I guess they are joining us now.
Very much the question that I would have as well. It would be very important that we have the opportunity to run sound checks with them as well before we get started.
Yeah.
Hi, Jean. Selene is having trouble being admitted, her backup device.
Yeah, I admitted them. It says that they're joining according to the participants list on Zoom, but I'm not sure why they're not actually getting into the room though.
Yeah, that's strange.
Yes, I'm trying again. So
okay, it's funny. Like I even see you have two different accounts in the waiting room, and they're both stuck on joining. So I'm not really sure. It's Zoom is always a pleasure. So just to confirm, we are waiting on Paul, Edward, Massimiliano, and Nazreen.
That's right.
Okay.
Should I do something or just?
I'm not sure if you have contact information for them or if Ava, I don't know if on your end, if the team is in contact with the other speakers.
I received two different links, so that might account for them not being in the right one. I received like the general email from the symposium inviting me to join the session. So and then I received Hyun's very kind email reminding us that just in case we hadn't received the other one, we could link to this one. And this is the one I linked to in order to be here. So they might be in the other one.
Okay.
Perhaps that's what general participants. I might be stating the obvious. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to help.
Yeah, unfortunately, none of them are in the waiting room either, as far as I can tell.
Okay, done. Thank you.
Perfect. Great. I'm glad you got in.
Well, I just sent an email to the other speakers. Well, I don't know why they're not coming.
Je ne sais pas s'il y a quelqu'un de l'équipe organisatrice qui peut m'entendre présentement. Ava, Carl. Trying to check in with the organizers.
Hi, yeah, how can we help?
Well, we're missing 4 of our panelists. And I was just wondering if you were in contact with any of them.
Personally, I'm not. I can ask about that though, for sure.
Okay, yeah. We're missing Paul, Edward, Massimiliano, and Nazreen right now. And we're going to have to run sound checks with them before we can actually start the session.
For sure, that all sounds important. Just give me one moment.
Okay, great, thanks. Hello, Massimiliano.
Hello. 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 Sorry for late, but in my calendar, that was scheduled in an hour from now. So this is probably a problem of time zone.
Yeah, the schedule is in Santiago time.
Okay, so it's now. Sorry about it.
That's okay. It's great that you're able to join us. I'm one of the interpreters who's going to be working during the panel today, and we're just trying to run sound checks with everyone, try and make sure that we have a sufficient audio quality to provide the service.
Okay.
I'm wondering on your end, do you have a microphone that you are able to wear, either a headset or an inline mic?
I have. In case it's necessary, I can wear some headphone and microphone.
Yeah, that would be great if you could get that.
Okay, I will. I will try now. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much.
No problem. No problem. I moved to another room and then I wear my headphone and and microphone. Okay. Posso stare qui che ho bisogno di fare una riunione qui. Sì, non è qua però. Ok, sulle porte chiuse per favore. Sì.
Lo que pasa es que yo
Hi, Paul. Do you hear me, Paul?
And just 1 second. I'll be back in 1 second. Thank you.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Can you hear me better than before?
Right now, it's not, no, not particularly better. I'm guessing these are AirPods that you're wearing?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes AirPods don't produce the best quality of sound because the microphone is placed so far behind the mouth.
Okay.
Do you have any options that would have a mic that would hang in front of you, either in line?
I have another option. Let me try if this option works.
Sure, yeah, that would be great.
Hi, Jean.
Hi, Paul.
How you doing?
Good. Good to see you.
Yes, I see.
So, on your end, we're just running through the sound checks right now. Do you have a mic with you that you can wear?
Tatiana, ¿hay micrófono aquí?
¿Micrófono ya no tiene?
No sé.
Si habla, ¿no te escucha?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
It's not a great audio quality. You're very faint and we can hear all of the room around you.
Okay, someone's going to see if they can get a microphone.
Okay, that would be great.
Hi, Hyun Mook.
Hi. How are you doing there?
Everything is good. How are you?
So everything is okay?
Yeah, it's been a good experience so far. Very busy, but
yeah, you look very busy. Oh.
Yeah, we started a bit early. It's 9. We started at 9, and it goes to about 7 because there's several different sessions and so on.
Yeah.
Were you able to see any of the sessions yesterday?
Not really. I was yeah.
Okay, we'll put it on YouTube anyways in the next day or so each sessions. I think there's a microphone here.
Great. I'm just going to mute you while you get that set up, Paul, and finish doing the check with Massimiliano at the same time.
Yep.
Professor Tarocci, maybe you want to change your name in your screen. You have my name.
You're just muted right now to let you know, Professor.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me better than before?
Yes, that sounds great. That's a wonderful audio quality right there.
Good.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, Jean, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, much better, Paul.
Is that better? Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Gracias.
very, very good improvement. Thank you so much for finding that. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, Massimiliano. Hello, Carla. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session. Well, we are missing one speaker, but since we are already 15 minutes later than the expected starting time, so I think we better start now.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So just, I think that's a good call. I just want to let you know that obviously we didn't have an opportunity to run sound checks with Edward and Nazreen. If they do join later, we may have to suspend service depending on how their audio quality is at that time. I also want to let you all know that we're only going to be allowing 3 microphones to be activated at any given time, including the interpreter, so 2 speakers maximum at once. So we will be muting microphones if people leave them on while they're not speaking, just to let you know, if you go to speak and you're muted, you didn't remember doing it, that was us, our apologies. It just allows us to have a much cleaner audio where Zoom's not trying to mix in background noise while someone else is speaking.
Okay.
So with that, I think, Ava, if you want to activate the interpretation function and get all the interpreters in.
I have a question. Is it possible? Can you hear me? Yeah. Is it possible to share my screen to show a couple of slides? It is possible to share slides?
I think so. Do you see the screen sharing button?
Yes,
Okay, then I think you can share your screen.
Okay, just in case, just one slide if it's possible, but we'll see.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, then I think we can start now. So
I haven't been added to the booth yet.
Sorry?
I'm just waiting to be added to the interpretation booth.
Should I do that, or someone else is supposed to do
no,
that?
she should be in now. Sorry, I was just seeing your message there, reminding me which language to put her down for.
Is it done now? Can we start now?
I think we should be ready.
Okay, good. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2022 UNESCO Chair in Democracy, Global Citizenship and Transformative Education Symposium, held in collaboration with the Pontificia Universidad Católica del Valparaíso under the theme of dialogue and emancipation. My name is Hyun Mook Lim, Director of Asia Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding in Seoul, South Korea. And it's my great pleasure to be the moderator of this session, UNESCO Chair Roundtable on Global Citizenship Education. For this session on Global Citizenship Education, we will be focusing on the UNESCO's 1947 recommendation. 1974 recommendation concerning education for international understanding, cooperation and peace, and education relating to human rights and fundamental freedom, which is now being revised. We hope to cultivate and engage in critical dialogue, reflection, and discussion in this session, which will be 1 hour in length. We have 4 panelists who will present and dialogue with one another for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have about 10 minutes at the end to invite questions and comments through the Zoom and Facebook platforms. Please send your comments or questions at any time, and also please turn off your microphone. Make sure turn off your microphone. And one last point before we start. This 4-day symposium is open access without cost via Zoom and Facebook, and has some 41-hour sessions in English, French, and Spanish, many of which are interpreted into one or both of the other languages. Please refer to the symposium website for more information, and you are invited to attend other sessions. Also, at the end of the day, there is an open happy hour session in which everyone can attend and discuss the sessions and ideas and issues of importance in a relaxed manner. You can find the link for the happy hour on the symposium website. Many thanks for being with us today. So let's start our session. As you know, UNESCO's 1974 recommendation is, in one sense, an expression of the essence of UNESCO. UNESCO's mission is to contribute to peace through education, science, and culture. And in order to do this, what UNESCO's constitution mentions first is advancing mutual knowledge and understanding of peoples. So international understanding is a core message of UNESCO's constitution and lies at the heart of UNESCO as an intellectual organization. Therefore, the 1974 recommendation on education for international understanding has been one of the most influential documents of UNESCO. Over the last 7 decades, it has provided inspiration and reference for a wide range of stakeholders in many parts of the world who have strived for peace, justice, human rights, respect for cultural diversity, and harmony with nature. It has many important elements that are still relevant and effective. However, the necessity for updating and revising this recommendation has continuously been raised by many people. So the work is being done for the revision, and now we have the draft revised recommendation. I have put the link to this draft and also to the original version in the chat box for your reference. Recently, UNESCO has distributed this draft to the member states so that they can take a look and provide feedback to UNESCO by the end of this year. I think this process of revision is itself helping us mobilize and revitalize awareness and interest in the kind of education that seeks to realize vision and ideas of UNESCO. Education for peace, human rights, international understanding, global citizenship, and sustainable development. So I very much look forward to the conversation in this session of UNESCO chairs relating to this kind of education. And we have 4 UNESCO chairs in this session, but I'm sorry, we are missing one panelist. And so now we have just 3 panelists. Professor Paul Carr, of course, you all know him already because he's the organizer of this symposium. He's the UNESCO Chair in Democracy, Global Citizenship, and Transformative Education at the University of Quebec, Canada. And Professor Massimiliano Tarozzi, UNESCO Chair in Global Citizenship Education in Higher Education at the University of Bologna, Italy. And Professor Carla Sabatini, UNESCO Chair in Education for Sustainability and Global Citizenship at the University of San Andres, Argentina. Please welcome the panelists and let us start with Professor Carr. Please share with us your views and thoughts about the revision of the 1974 recommendation and the draft revised version. Professor Carr.
Thank you, Hyun Mook.
You have 5 minutes. Please.
Thank you. Wonderful to see you and to be with you. Welcome to everyone. Good to be with Carla and Massimiliano and everyone. I'd like to talk kind of generally about the recommendation and also in relation to global citizenship, especially global citizenship education. And I think these protocols and these recommendations and these policies and so on are very important at a normative level, at a symbolic level, and also to stimulate research, thinking, and other types of engagement. But I want to raise a couple concerns that are related to this type of work. And the first is that global citizenship education is very difficult to undertake because often we are structured and focused on national identities, national education policies, national citizenship regimes, and so on. And so the first part is, of course, the new recommendation will look at global citizenship more specifically and more broadly. And that, I think, it's a very important feature, and it updates the policy, the recommendation. I think to look at global citizenship, we have to look at some of the core issues. And some of the core issues are, why do we still have conflict and war and hatred and xenophobia? And we live in a world with roughly 200 countries, 8 billion people. And I think the main concern is that when countries and nation states sign on to this recommendation, what will they do, not only themselves, but to engage with others who may not adhere or want to adhere or may want to work against some of the values involved in this recommendation. And I think that leads to the part of funding and engagement. We see massive migrations from the global south to the global north, and that's not stopping. It's continuing because of conflict, because of environmental devastation, because of economic reasons, because of racism. So I think the education part is fundamental, clearly, but it also has to be connected with the economic and political components, and to think about how the global north in particular can not necessarily assist, but be in solidarity with the global south. And I think this has been a major concern. There were major UNESCO goals and efforts for 2000, for 2015, and I guess 2030 and so on. This is really the core, I think, of global citizenship. How do we work together as a planet, as all peoples outside of these national regimes? The question of research and accountability is pivotal. I think we have to document more extensively what are the issues and the outcomes. And it's striking that still in 2022 there are many children who don't go to school, many girls facing discrimination massively. And often there's economic and political issues related to it. It's not because people are not interested in going to school. It's because there are no schools, or because teachers are working 3 and 4 jobs, or because the political situation is such that there is, it's not tenable. And so I think that the question of critical engagement is pivotal for this recommendation, that beyond kind of laying out the framework, even in Canada, I think there's lots of very good work being done, but it's a very complex system like elsewhere. There's 10 provincial systems, education systems, 3 territorial. The federal government isn't really responsible for education. We have Indigenous issues and schools. So how do we think about this more globally in relation to peace and global citizenship? And so I think that the recommendation, the proposed recommendation, it is very good in moving forward. And I guess what I'm suggesting is that we need to really think about accountability and research, and what about the parties that aren't interested in partaking in this. There are so many vulnerable groups on the margins. There's refugees, there's traditionally marginalized groups, often Indigenous groups, people of color. I think we have to really raise those issues, the minoritized sectors within this framework. So I guess I would just end by saying I think that we need to really focus on solidarity and what that means. And we really have to stop this quest of using war and militarization to force people to come around to different ways of thinking. And this is something that we really have to rethink in relation to education and schooling. And so I do hope that we will go even further. The recommendation is a very good framework, and how we kind of encourage and instill and support all people around the world to engage with this type of education. Thank you, Hyun Mook.
Okay, thank you very much for your contribution, intervention. Well, I think you are very right to emphasize the importance of working together in the spirit of solidarity in these times of instability and uncertainty. So yeah, I appreciate your point very much. The working with vulnerable groups and marginalized groups. That's the very point of the revising this recommendation. Okay, then let's move on to our next panelist, Professor Tarozzi. Please share your views and thoughts about this process.
This process and the revision. Yes, thank you, Dr. Lim, for this, and thank you, Paul, for this invitation. I think it's very important to continue the discussion on the revision of this 1974 recommendation, because it's a very powerful tool for UNESCO. It's one of the most powerful devices that UNESCO has, because it has the most powerful legal power. Of course, it's not binding to the national government, but still is not as binding as a declaration or a convention, but still is one of document that has a great power of intervention in the nation states who support and subscribe this recommendation. So this is very important. It's very crucial, the process of expanding and finalizing the document. And recently, this recommendation is important because has a great impact on policy and curriculum development in the countries, subscribing countries. And recently, this new edition has been definitely updated for better reflecting the contemporary concepts and areas of action, such as sustainable development, global citizenship, education for health and well-being. So these concepts are at the core now of this new draft, and also be expanded, because if you look at the 45 articles, so the first edition now has 64, so almost double in the size of this event. And what is particularly important for me and for all of us, we are speaking here as UNESCO chairs in global citizenship, education, and related issues, is that there is now a strong commitment to the implementation to mainstreaming education for sustainable development and education and global citizenship education. The current state of the recommendation is very committed to advance sustainable development goal number 4, and especially target 4.7. So this is very important. There is also an ongoing discussion on whether or not the 1974 recommendation should serve as a major tool for monitoring the progress toward the target 4.7 of the Sustainable Development Goals. That is an open discussion, but probably we can discuss later on, because there's always the risk of measuring or making too accountable this principle, a humanistic declaration. But if I can share the screen, I would just show you very briefly a slide here comparing the use of terms. I just simply compare the use of the terms in the two recommendations by comparing the lexicon use. And I noticed, for example, very briefly, that the word of peace, as that nicely and rightly Paul stressed, has increased. Now is used 39 times in this revision, while in the past was a little bit less, 28. the first edition was very much national. The term national or nation was used more or less the same times that recently. It also was more used the term international, as you see, rather than global. Global was almost inexistent, while international combined with understanding or by itself is probably one of the most widely used in the first edition. Development and sustainability was absent in 1974 recommendation, while now are being used a lot of times, 57 times development, 43 times sustainable, 35 times sustainable development as a notion. And the same is for global citizenship, 25 times, while was completely absent the idea of global citizenship in the first edition, while just 8 times was used as citizen in terms of civic citizenship education or civic education. And new terms are equitable, diversity, transformative. Those new terms were completely absent in the past. Okay, is not a very careful analysis, of course, but just to share with you some thoughts based on the important use of the lexicon in the two different editions that demonstrates something about the strong improvement of this process toward a global citizenship education. Still, something is lacking because some terms are lacking. Decolonization, post-colonial, those related issues are absent, still absent. There's not enough space for refugees and refugees education, but these are some lacking points, and that we can discuss in the further discussion.
Thank you very much, Professor Taruzzi. Would you stop sharing your screen? Okay, good. Yeah, thank you very much for your intervention. I think you have raised very important issues here. But first of all, your contribution is very well noted. I mean, your analysis of the key terms in the revised text as compared to the original text. It is very interesting. In the revised text, we have a lot of new terms, including global citizenship and many other notions. But you have pointed out the revised text still doesn't include the important terms or concepts like decolonization or refugee. So I think we should come back to this issue later. Thank you very much. And now I invite Professor Carla Sabatini.
Thank you very much.
Professor Sabatini,
yes,
please share your thoughts.
Well, good morning, good afternoon to everyone joining us from different parts of the world. Thank you once again for this wonderful invitation. It's great to be here sharing views on this important step that we are taking as mankind, joining efforts to revise our own reflections on such important issues for the course of humanity, such as taking care of human rights and why not life itself, as I'm going to go deeper into in a few minutes. I really enjoyed listening to Paul and Massimo, and along similar lines to the ones Massimo has just shared with us, I decided to start my very short reflections looking at the words in the titles of both documents, celebrating the need for updating such an important step for UNESCO and mankind as the 1974 declaration. I just quickly wanted to go over the titles with you. And whereas the first document talked about understanding, cooperation, peace, and education about human rights and fundamental freedoms, we are moving on towards a paradigm shift where the key concepts are global citizenship, peace and human rights, that also appear in the new title, and sustainable development. So I wanted to focus for a few seconds on the emergence of these new two terms, global citizenship and sustainable development, and what they bring along to this revised version. Echoing Shakespeare's lovely immortal phrase, "What's in a name?" I want to invite you to think about what we understand by global citizenship, especially in education and sustainable development. And I'm very pleased to look at the document of the revised version and see that in section 3 of the definition, both phrases, terms, global citizenship and sustainable development, seem to mirror each other and place an emphasis on something that is very important for us as mankind, as humankind, to keep at the core of any intention, such as producing a global document of the scope of this declaration, which is the emphasis on our interdependence and our interconnectedness, not only as different peoples of the earth that deserve equal treatment and equal access to the common good that educational services mean to any society, but also in terms of where we stand in relation to other beings, other living beings in our planet, and other elements of our planets that are non-being and that deserve our respect and our stewardship, which lie at the core of the idea that without taking care of life itself, we cannot think about any sort of citizenship. So this led me to think, we may develop this later on in our dialogue about how each chair is dealing with these ideas, but this led me to think about the sort of, I'm sorry for the informal expression, but egg or chicken situation we have here. What comes first? Citizenship that is equipped to take care of its planet because it understands that life itself, it comes first and foremost before anything else, or an educated citizenship that will then be equipped to shape political, economical, social systems that will ensure the sustainability of life on our planet. And that, of course, is a conundrum that cannot be solved, but I think is a debate that lies at the heart of this declaration. And definitely then issues that were pointed out by Massimo and by Paul regarding structural inequality between the global south and the global north, or challenges entailed in including the voices of marginalized groups, are also, important for us to include in this declaration, because declarations are all about coming together as societies, as the peoples of the earth, and stating what's important for us. That may eventually sort of cascade into policies and laws and all the different initiatives that are nicely laid out in the document, and that also mirror important documents such as UNESCO's 2021 roadmap for education and for sustainable development, which also applies nicely to global citizenship. So these two pillars, these new two pillars, sustainable development and global citizenship, led me to think of education, and particularly transformative education, as the means to actually achieve those two larger ends. Perhaps this is kind of daring to sketch the conceptual ground in a rather informal way early on, but I thought it was a nice starting point for the reflection before we dive into the priority for action areas, such as addressing the major pending challenge entailed in the fact that many people do not have access to high quality education, from refugees to simply people who have not yet ever historically been subject to policies and what is needed to address this need. And also although this translates into regulatory frameworks, and regulatory frameworks are important in safeguarding human rights, among them the right to access lifelong quality education in many countries in our planet, governance or issues and transparency issues are challenges that need to be addressed when thinking about how these policies are going to be implemented, because not all countries have equal capacity to enforce law. So that's important to take into account. The fact of having a law will not necessarily entail, however obvious it may seem, that the rights that the law is meant to ensure will actually be protected. And then a couple of points in terms of how countries become enabling environments, or the extent to which countries become enabling environments for these wonderful intentions to actually materialize into transformation. Some of them have to do with infrastructure, and Paul has somehow addressed this, and the extent to which bare minimum infrastructure to ensure the conditions for learning is provided all over the world. And also I'm thinking in terms of the narrative. I have picked questions regarding the narrative that our curricula shares with the generations to come. My feeling is that our educational systems have traditionally passed on all the knowledge from the past, and that more than ever we need curricula that looks at the future and that looks at the major challenges that make it particularly uncertain at this point, perhaps more dizzyingly uncertain than ever before. So a curriculum that looks at the future will necessarily have to place more emphasis on competencies and a little bit less on content. And in that sense, I'm glad to see an interesting paradigm shift in the intentions of the new document, which is expanded, as Massimiliano has also pointed in. And together with the curricula, this will have to come hand in hand with an effort to examine the underlying grammar that shapes educational systems, and that it makes it look pretty much like separate silos that are not connected to one another all over the world. Of course, this is a hasty generalization, but I think that given that many cultures come together in this lovely symposium, it's interesting to look at that challenging. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Sabatini. You have raised a number of issues which are very important for us in this session. Well, we have about 10 or 15 minutes left, but we started maybe 15 minutes later than the schedule. So probably we could have more time, maybe 10 minutes behind the schedule. So now I invite the speakers, panelists, to have a conversation among ourselves. Professor Tarozzi asked about the validity of the 1974 recommendation as a monitoring tool for the implementation of SDG 4.7. He mentioned that there might be some risks in that exercise, and Professor Sabatini raised the question of citizenship education and educated citizens. I want to hear more about the question. So now we have these two questions, but of course you can raise other issues or questions to any any panelist in this session. So the floor is open. Who's going to start first?
Maybe Hyun Mook,
yes.
If I might add something, and thank you so much for Carla and Massimino's interventions. And I think, I guess the 3 points that I have in my mind are one, that I think we have to, or it's worth considering problematizing the notion of democracy. Do we live in a democracy? How do we build a democracy? And if we're not in a democracy, why don't we say so? If we are in a democracy, how do we actually build that in and through education? My own sense is that our education systems aren't very democratic in general. And I'm not saying that we're not doing good things and there aren't good people, good teachers, but it's very difficult to build global citizenship and peace and all of these other things when the actual systems we have for developing this, I could elaborate, but I'll just say that there's a lot of issues that how do we actually build democracy? When we think of schools, we can think of pedagogy, curriculum, educational policy, epistemology, leadership, institutional culture. And importantly, I think we have to really think about informal and non-formal education. Formal education is very important, but informal and non-formal education, civil society, where we learn to be. And in the research that I've undertaken for several years with my colleague Gina Tezé, we've found that in many countries, in fact, all the countries we've done our research in, is that most of the educators, teachers, teacher education students acknowledge or indicate that they themselves did not have a democratic experience in their own education. And this is somewhat of a barrier to engaging with democracy, controversial issues, and all of the issues that we're presenting, the peace and so on. So I think democracy, it's not just something on the outside. We kind of think, oh, we're democratic and other people aren't. How do we actually build it? And this, of course, involves, some of the themes that we're thinking about, dialogue, but also complete engagement, reconciliation, indigenous peoples, marginalized people, political literacy, social justice. The next point, the last point is just that we live in societies, many societies that just take it for granted, and it's a given that capitalism is the one and only system, economic, political system, neoliberalism, and that has a major impact on how we think about funding education, what the objectives of education are. Unfortunately, through neoliberal thinking, one of the main objectives of education has become to get a job. Well, we know that people have to live in societies, we have to live with each other, we have to stop feminicide and all the other racism and so on. So if the focus is on getting a job, often we're moving away from this. And once again, I'm not inferring that people in education aren't engaged and wanting to. I'm saying that these systems we built often are aligned with different types of classifications. And so the global part is very difficult. It's very difficult within national systems to think about peace for other societies and social justice, because often people thinking, well, this is our own. And when we look at national education debates, for example, so I think that's it. The rights, and I echo Carla's point, and is that, or Massimino's, is that often these are words on paper, and the ability to implement these kind of very noble and important reforms, there's a limited capacity. And so why do we not think about the world? I'm not saying it's, I'm saying that it's a global problem. And so I often get the sense that global citizenship education, sadly, is something that's kind of conceived in the global north and thrown down to the global south. And there are some opportunities and so on. But yeah, our friend who's in Tokyo has written a nice book on global citizenship education epistemologies from the south. Basio, yeah. But anyways, I think that we have to think about it as a global system, and I'm very concerned. There's a lot of conflicts around the world, Ukraine, of course, and Yemen and many others, but how do we put an end to the development and selling and utilization of arms and conflict as a way of moving forward? So education is fundamental, but we have to really kind of rethink how we support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your points. By the way, I'm very sorry that I didn't recognize Professor Nasrin Dasu has joined us. So let us hear Professor Dasu's intervention first.
Good afternoon. Sorry, we've been having a situation called load shedding, which means that our power gets cut off at different times. So there was a bit of a power cut issue that I had to deal with. But good afternoon from South Africa, and thank you for the opportunity. So, you know, I'm sorry I didn't get the first part of the discussion, but for me, if we look at the recommendation, the 1974 recommendation, and we try and align it with what global citizenship means, I've made a few points, and I think a lot of the discourse in the 1974 recommendation needs to be replaced with terminology that's more current, that speaks to a younger generation of people. For instance, we don't talk about international education anymore. I mean, what does international education mean when we are a global society, and global citizenship is supposed to be something that's, that we all subscribe to? If we're talking about the 1974 recommendation in particular, that some of the objectives under the guiding principles, that we clarify those. For example, the abilities to communicate with others. It's so wide. How do we communicate with others? What sort of underpinning is there to this communication? Is it entrenched in, again, a north-south kind of communication where people in the south, it's almost as if there's this colonial attitude towards people in the south from the north? And how do we dispel this north-south debate all the time? A next point is perhaps a rephrasing of number 6, which under the guiding principle, in order that it reflects more current circumstances. So much has changed over the decades. And I think not a complete overhaul of the 1974 recommendation, but a lot of the discourse within that document needs to be examined carefully. Also, for me, the text of the document versus practicalities. How is it done in practice? There's a disjuncture. There's something that's in that document, but it doesn't talk to the practice. So I've done a sort of a very in-depth analysis of all the points on those guiding principles. So again, my plea is that the terminology changes, an emphasis on incorporating the concepts of education for sustainable development, global citizenship education, and that's especially relevant in number 33, C and D. I agree that pre-service and in-service teacher education is important, and it's indicated as such. I would suggest that the principles of assessment of learning, for learning, and as learning is included in this document too, not just the term evaluation. Next, I think it's necessary to qualify some of the statements, for example, number 33A, what exactly is meant by provide teachers with motivations. I mean, that's so huge. How do you motivate teachers? You can't just say provide them with motivations. What sort of motivations? How do you incentivize teachers? And it shouldn't just be a monetary incentive. It should be something deeper that has meaning, that celebrates who a teacher is. And for me, the role of non-government organizations in teacher preparation is crucial, and it's included in number 34 of the recommendation. So basically, if we talk about global citizenship, I think it needs to be underpinned in the recommendation, and it has to be highlighted in all of those examples that are given. And I think that the fundamental guidelines and the principles of the recommendation is noteworthy. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. But given the context and the period in which it was designed, the next 2 decades, or well, the future, not even the next 2 decades, but going forward, it would mean that this document has to be a living document, not just a policy document. It has to be lived by everyone that subscribes to it. And again, sorry that I had an issue with connectivity. But I suppose that's the dilemmas we face in the South. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Dasu, for your excellent intervention. Well, you have raised many important issues. But I'm afraid that we don't have enough time to touch upon all those issues. But certainly, we can discuss some of the issues that you have raised. Okay, coming back to the points made by Paul, you have mentioned the 3 critical issues: the question of how to build democracy, and the question of capitalism, and third one, maybe if I remember correctly, the issue of global citizenship, how to practice global citizenship education in the context of national education systems. So first I put these questions to you, and we can start our discussion from these questions. So Professor Taruzzi, would you like to?
Yes, thank you. Just a few words, because we don't have much time remaining. But the stimuli that Paul raised are very important. I think that they are crucial for our understanding and the way in which we can implement and promote recommendation, and more broadly the UNESCO approach to education. So problematizing democracy is crucial, because this kind of devices like a recommendation or national constitutions, or even more broadly human rights declaration and conventions, are powerful tool for supporting social democratic society, and not those kind of democracy based on extreme liberties, based on the free negotiation around the free markets, a sort of anarchies of liberty. So if you want to have a more democratic, liberal democratic and social democratic democracy, we need those shared principles on which to ground our understanding. So this is very crucial for find a space for this type of documents. But here there is one of the historical UNESCO's dilemmas in education, because by definition, as being an international organization, UNESCO has to be politically sensitive, cannot enter too much into political analysis of the societies, but at the same time, education is by definition politics. You cannot even imagine education without politics. You cannot speak about education without speaking about politics. Therefore, structural inequalities, we mentioned, Carla also mentioned this issue. Structural inequalities do not emerge from this document, not even emerge from the future dimension of UNESCO in the recent Reimagining Our Future Together report. Even more, it also failed to understanding the real dimension of the capitalism, the inequality based on the capitalist, neoliberal capitalism. But this cannot be done by UNESCO because as an international organization made of national states, cannot enter into too much in detail into sensitive, politically sensitive challenges and issues. But without dealing with these issues, without dealing with the inequality created by neoliberal capitalism, you cannot understand why there are structural inequalities, why all these issues are not mentioned and included. So this is one of the dilemma of the UNESCO because of its institutional role.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, you have just pointed out the UNESCO's dilemma of being unable to enter into political debate or discussion. Well, in one sense, you are right, but on the other hand, throughout the history of UNESCO, there have been political discussions or political debates in UNESCO. So in some way, there has always been this political discussion. So I think we have to imagine, or we have to come up with very sensitive or very strategic ways of bring those political issues into the forum, into the UNESCO's discussion forum. I think we have to develop some kind of very delicate balance between the internationality of UNESCO and the also UNESCO's ethical mission, UNESCO's mandate to discuss the political issues from the ethical point of view. Well, that's my contribution. So, well, Professor Sabatini, would you like to make some comments on this issue?
Yes, thank you very much. Listening carefully to Nasreen, very nice to meet you, Nasreen. Thank you for your thoughts. I think part of what Massimiliano was sharing with us as the challenges of assuming that recommendations like these, which are maybe sometimes received as too general or too broad, bring along the great challenge of translating into different cultural and political contexts alongside with their sensitivities, all the assumptions that underpin them, right? Like at some point, Nasreen just said very swiftly, we are all supposed to ascribe to the idea of global citizenship. I understand, I'm going to very boldly distort her comment and recontextualize it by wondering, do we really all ascribe to the idea of global citizenship? That I mean, it would be very nice, and it's a nice aspirational value to think that as a planet and a diverse but global set of citizenships rather than only one, we do ascribe to that idea, but unfortunately we're still far from that being a reality. Having said this, I agree with Hyun's vision that the role of agencies, organizations like UNESCO is much stronger, and it need not be underestimated in creating powerful discourse that aligns somehow the willpower of others, that eventually understand the convenience of, at least formally, by way of a beginning, ascribing to these universal values. So I'm thinking that with all this complex scenario, with threats to peace, with structural inequalities that we've already talked about, a climate crisis that has brought along a health crisis that made us all realize that we're all in the same storm, though perhaps not on the same boat to face that storm, to go through it. I think we all agree that we are called upon repurposing education, and this revision of the 1974 statement is an interesting step in the direction of repurposing education towards some more transformative power. And in this sense, the last document that Massimiliano brought along, the social contract, the idea of a social contract for education that UNESCO has put together through a participatory process, I think is an interesting potential of what we can do as the world of educators, decision makers, to sort of wonder where we can find that motivation that Nasrin was calling upon us to find, right? And if we don't believe in the transformative power of education, well, what is there for us left to believe in? So I just want to borrow the idea of the future as a cultural fact in the sense of a Badurai's understanding of the global condition, to perhaps share the final wish that documents like these recommendations do become a significant step forward in strengthening our agency towards a future of possibility rather than just probability, embracing the politics of a much needed indeed hope. So thank you very much for inviting me here.
Thank you very much, Professor Sabatini. I very much appreciate your point that we have to believe in the power of education. Education as a transformative, transforming power of education. That I truly agree with you. I just got the message that this session will close automatically in just a few minutes at 10. At 10? 10? Yeah.
Oh, no.
So
actually, we're in Chile for 1 hour ahead. Yeah, sorry, no, actually it's 11 o'clock in Chile.
Yeah,
so,
I had 12. Yeah, so at 12, yes. So I think I have to ask you to make just a final comment in 30 minutes each. No, 30 seconds, sorry. So Professor Dasu, please just final comments, 30 seconds.
30 seconds, final comment. I think it's crucial that there is some kind of intervention from UNESCO. We can't say UNESCO cannot intervene when it comes to transforming education, because in this country, it was education that helped transform and led us into a democracy. And we need that kind of support, an international supporting body to say, yes, we need to continue to transform and you have our support. That's my 30 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dasu. Thank you so much. Professor Tarozzi?
Yes, just 30 seconds, just to say that I do believe in the power, transformative power of education and in transformative power of UNESCO support in promoting transformative education. The dilemma I raise is a dilemma in the analysis of the society, which is always present and is always difficult to combine education and politics, but it's always important to combine education and policy. Based on that, is also crucial thank you, Carla, for mentioning, it's also crucial to adopt a perspective of hope for the future, a critical hope, not an illusionist or a superficial, but a critical hope is absolutely a critical tool for transforming education based on the direction that are also present in this recommendation.
Okay, very good. Perspective of hope. We can remember that. Professor Sabatini, just final comment.
Thank you once again for everything. I think spaces of shared dialogue, intercultural dialogue, and very important intergenerational dialogue are also very helpful in the kind of progress that documents like these revised recommendations are trying to bring along. We are in times more than ever of much needed intergenerational justice, and that is at the core of the educational task. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes. Professor Carr.
Yes, thank you to everyone. Me too, I'm very hopeful because we have no other choice, and we'll just continue on even if there isn't a recommendation, but I think the recommendation is a good idea. And I just want to emphasize that all of the dialogue that we can have across the world, and we need to break down. I'm very happy we're doing this in English today, but we have to think about other languages, cultures, peoples, especially indigenous peoples, and also the informal part of education. Formal education is wonderful, very important, but all these social movements and everything we're learning about everyone around the world informally, I think this will really help us engage towards peace. So a wonderful session. Thank you for being involved.
Yes. Yes, great. Yes. Well, thank you very much for panelists for sharing your thoughts and views and your insights. I very much appreciate your interventions, and I think we had a very interesting conversation in this session. And of course, we should continue this discussion until we finally adopt the revised recommendation in November next year. So please stay in touch, and we continue our discussion. Thank you very much for your contribution, and also thank you to the audience who participated in this session. Thank you so much, and have a good day.